Hi, and welcome to Very Special Coworking, a podcast about what makes coworking special. And this month we're welcoming, you tell me if I pronounce it right, because in between English, French, Spanish, I'm not sure. So Jean-Baptiste Pimenta de Miranda, who's the co-founder, the CEO, multi-entrepreneur of FLYDESK and Moonwork. First of all, Jean-Baptiste, many thanks for being here with us this month.
Hello, Fanny. Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
Same here. So as I was saying, we've met on LinkedIn and Jean-Baptiste is doing many different things. But what I love the most is that he has been working a lot with co-working spaces, trying to retain their members and the members from maybe bigger companies. Because at some point, once you're a small company, maybe it's interesting to go to a co-working space when you have like 1, 2, 3 employees, but then you have 10, you have 20, and maybe you want your own space, but maybe not. So that's what Jean-Baptiste has been working on. And first of all, maybe Jean-Baptiste, could you explain us a bit what is FLYDESK and what is Moonwork?
All right. So I'm an entrepreneur basically in tech, SaaS, B2B, and mostly HR tech. And in 2019, we launched FLYDESK. So FLYDESK is a hybrid work management software. It started actually by being a co-working space network. And it evolved progressively into an application that we deployed within a company to help a company that has more people than the number of desks available and that embraces a hybrid workplace management solution. So we had to build something that would allow a company to manage its daily workplace arrangements for its employees, basically. And that's what FLYDESK is about. And as for Moonwork, my latest venture, it's a recruitment platform in the AI space. So it's quite different from workplace management, but still embraces new trends of working, the future of work, trying to help companies find the best match by leveraging AI technology as well, to facilitate the matchmaking and help companies basically when they need to recruit.
Yeah, so Moonwork is your most recent work.
Yes.
And FLYDESK was there before. You were saying that you started FLYDESK in 2019?
Yes.
So what happened then that you decided, I'm going to build as you were saying, at first it was a network of co-working spaces. So why did you decide to build such a network?
So I've been I've been under some flexible work arrangement for quite many years. If you saw my LinkedIn, actually, I started writing articles about nomad flexible work arrangements for actually almost more than 10 years now. I was working basically in Asia at the time. I was sent by my French company in Asia. I lived in Hong Kong. My boss were in Singapore. My team were spread across Asia. And I started to realize that the flexible work model was quite interesting. We started to give more freedom to employees, to my teammates, and they started actually to be happier by giving them the option of coming to the office or working remotely. And suddenly it became quite interesting for me as a real driver for motivation and excellent work. And we were going beyond all the basic discussion that you normally have when people are frustrated with their job and people being happy with a very good work-life balance. You started to see some real benefits. And suddenly in 2018, 17, we started to talk with some friends, entrepreneurs in Hong Kong. And we said, okay, let's think about a way to approach this market and give a chance for traditional corporations, let's say, to think about flexible work conditions. And so we started everything in 2019, and 2020 was the COVID. And suddenly we were actually pioneers in these remote work engagements, and suddenly everybody had to work remotely. So it brought some twists in the things we were doing. But that was really a silver lining of the pandemic, is that it really highlighted how remote work could work. And what I understand is that you had been working remotely for a few years before starting. So you were on the client side, let's say. Exactly.
A big company having all those decentralized teams and managing them and being like, we don't need to be in the same building anymore, actually.
Yeah. And so surprisingly, actually, before starting my own entrepreneur journey, let's say, I was working in the telecommunication space in a very large corporation that was actually building remote collaboration software. But as crazy as it seems, the management of that group were not fans of remote work. So we were actually selling softwares to help companies work in a remote models, but we were not even embracing the things we were doing on our own. But progressively things evolved and I started to have some freedom in the way I was managing my teams. And that's when it got me into thinking, okay, let's try and bring this to traditional corporations and bring them tools that allow companies and employees to work wherever they work from.
So from your very experience, you started to create a platform, so a network first,
yes,
to allow other companies to do the same thing that you were actually doing.
Yes, exactly. And it's also came in, the whole story started with relationships and meetings, the people that are around you. And I was actually lucky to have among my friends a CEO of Native Union. It's a tech manufacturer based in Hong Kong, a very good friend. And we were both thinking about the future of work and with my passion for remote work at the time, and him also with an entrepreneur mindset, trying to bring some value that was going beyond the hardware devices. We decided to partner also and to launch FLYDESK. And the idea was also to start with a co-working space network because it felt at the time that it was the easiest thing to get started with in the hybrid workplace management space. But we always had this intention of building something more like a software that allow more from an employee engagement and flexible work conditions. So the co-working space network was always the first step. And actually COVID happened. So especially we were based in Hong Kong. Our second country was Singapore. And both of those city countries, let's say, were having some really strong restrictions on the workplace. And it was hard to launch a network of co-working space at the time when nobody could even step into a co-working space. So it was quite funny. But the network grew and we have thousands of co-working space actually still on the platform today. But we want more to bring this as a tool we offer to the community, because ultimately my main concern is to try to deploy that software within companies, allowing them to manage their own space and that hybrid workplace management. But we kept the original, let's say, service of FLYDESK. So any co-working space can list themselves, and we don't even take commissions when it comes to on-demand desk booking. We're happy to always welcome more co-working space onto that network.
Yeah, so you started by gathering. Did you already know some co-working spaces? How did it go? Did you reach out to them to build a platform for them?
Yeah, I was a user myself. So I was, even though I was also stepping into some co-working space at the time. So in Hong Kong, in particular in Asia, you have a network of co-working space called the Hive, a super cool place. And then I started to discover all the network. You have very fancy co-working spaces, the executive center, you have the great room. So you have a lot of great co-working places in Asia. So I started to discover that. And then I also stepped into the more global players such as Spaces, WeWork. And the hardest one is getting the first co-working space to decide to partner with you. So that's actually the Hive. And we got our first client from that. And from the moment you have one, then two, then three, then four, etc. And then the ball keeps on rolling.
At some point, you switch from just a network to offering a tool to manage their seat.
Yeah, exactly. One realization on the network of co-working space also is that people are more loyal than we think. So they don't change co-working spaces every day. So it also became a realization that it was not necessarily going to be a super good business if we're taking just a minor, very small cut into the first introduction that you make for someone who discovers a co-working space, but ultimately they would sign a membership directly with them, and that's you out of the equation, let's say. But it was a very good way to have introductions to those co-working spaces, to discover the world of workspace arrangements, and to meet actually the companies and the users and start to listen to their pain and their needs. And that's when we started to think about the FLYDESK workplace application and the hybrid workplace application as an HR software, basically allowing companies to have visibility on the planning of people when they were working remotely, when they would come to the office, and start to provide a tool that would become a day-to-day and almost a necessity in some situations for companies to operate.
Yeah, so such an app was a demand from the co-working spaces or from the clients of co-working spaces, or both?
The clients themselves. And the funny thing is that the first feature we developed into the remote workspace was a bad feature. It came from the fear of COVID. So when the COVID happened, everybody started to be remote, and the managers were all suddenly freaking out because they were no longer seeing people and they were not trusting them. So the first we developed was actually a remote check-in feature, allowing people to just check in to say, hey, I'm working. So it was a demand from the boss, but completely rejected by the employees. So
Yeah.
we worked on these functionalities. The more we listened to the managers, but also to the employees, and that's when we started to
Yeah.
evolve progressively into building this hybrid planning view, as well as a desk sharing capability. That became like a real need for companies to operate. When you decide to make a real effort in reducing the size of your office, the number of employees, you have no choice. But because if you have just 20 desks for 100 people, you don't want to have everybody showing up on the same day. And so that becomes a necessity to have tools like ours to operate, basically. So by listening to customers, we started to elaborate, and we became quite agile, and we did many iterations of the software. And now we have a fully functional software that was built progressively. And each time we have a request, we add a new feature and so on. So it became something quite functional. And the co-working space themselves, we asked them about if they were interested in having this software. And one thing that is interesting is that they don't necessarily need our software for themselves, let's say, but they understand that deploying such a software for their members and for their company clients is a way for the co-working space to retain them. Because from the moment you give them an option to have more people than the number of desks that they are able to access at the same time in a co-working space, they are not worried about the moment when they reach their capacity, and they know they can probably extend another year with the same office, and they stay longer, and you don't have your empty space for a transition period. So that's a good way, I would say, for co-working space, by bringing more value to their clients and ultimately giving them satisfaction from their day-to-day productivity, but also making sure that you can keep them a little bit longer by being quite agile and letting more employees come to a shared space ultimately. So that's, I think, one thing that is interesting.
Yeah, it's not so flexible. Workspaces is not having the exact same number of seats in your headquarters, then in a co-working space, then having some people at home, but saying, hey, we have X number of seats in our head office, Y numbers of seats in co-working space. And we know that every day, depending on the day, the season, or that we have the number of people working from home. And we want to have in total the total number of members. So not having that many seats headquarters, not having that many seats co-working space, but having a bit of everything and allowing people to be wherever they want, but not have the exact number of seats as the number of employees, because that's not flexible, that's not adaptable, that's not what they want and what's effective.
The COVID made this real change in hybrid workplace arrangements. Before COVID, it was the majority of full office. Remote work was a real tiny share. And now I don't think anyone can be against this fact that hybrid work became the new norm. Like, if you're a company that forces people to come every day to the office, you're likely to be struggling in hiring the best talents. So it's the vast majority of workplace model became hybrid. You can check all the stats. That's what it is. And when you ask employees also, you can see that they have that there is a big trend focused on hybrid workplace. So some people say that it's the worst of all because you have to manage two aspects, being able to do remote and going to the office. But ultimately, it's what gives the best freedom. Those who want to come to the office, they can. Those who want to work remotely, they can. And so you always have this debate, those who are remote work advocates, those who are hybrid, and so on. But ultimately, I think giving the choice is what makes people efficient, loyal, have this feeling of being part of a community, a work culture as well. I think that's why I'm a big advocate of hybrid work, because I believe in the importance of coming back to the office. And when I say the office, it could be a regular office, but it could also be a co-working space. It's a place where you would literally meet people to not be just isolated in your home. So I'm a big advocate of hybrid work, and co-working space have a big role to play there, allowing even companies to have satellite office everywhere. You start to spread and hire people, not just in the expensive city where you live, and you start to give a little bit more freedom to people. You start to discover those satellite offices options where you have facilities a little bit further away, and you have 4 employees, and you give them a chance to actually access a space on their own and be together, which ultimately brings all the benefits of hybrid work.
Yeah, to go back to the people needs, some people are really big extrovert, and they like to be in the office, or as you're saying, not maybe the main office, but also a working space, a satellite office. But they like to be surrounded by people most of the time. But even them, I hear a lot that they like to have maybe one day a week or one day every week to be at home and do the admin stuff.
Yeah.
So they focus, they do the things that they need to do alone, and so they can spend the rest of the time surrounded by people. And there's the opposite of people who really need to be on their own and focus on their work, but maybe once a week or so, they like to be with other people, with their colleagues, and to have that human touch.
Yeah. There's a trend about what's the ultimate hybrid work model. Truth is, everyone is different in your seniority, the younger people, more senior people, everyone is different. But there is a general trend, let's say, around the 2 to 3 remote days per week that starts to become the most frequent workplace policies that HR try to put in place within companies. But again, saying that there's a general trend or that there is a general policy, we have this situation at FLYDESK when we hear our clients tell us, can we put in place a rule that actually allows only 2 remote days per week? It's almost a standard. Like every single one of our clients start to put in these things. But then there are exceptions. There are people who, for disability reasons, they cannot simply come to the office. So that's also being flexible also allows everyone to have their chance, which is fantastic. But then for the most common, let's say, part of the organizations, having this flex model, and usually what I see, like the 2-3 days is the perfect harmony, being able to come to the office on a regular basis, see people, but be able to disconnect on a weekly basis, focus on other work stuff that can be done from home. So that I think I find my balance in this, and it seems that within the most common group of people in this hybrid workplace.
Within the trend.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's for people's needs, employees' needs, which can also be some kind of benefits, showing that as a company you're providing such advantages.
Of course, for the company side, it's only beneficial, to my opinion, if you really embrace it in the right way. First, it will allow you to attract employees, future employees, the new generation. There's no way you get them to do what I was doing when I started my career. So first, that's about when you're creating your new base of your workforce that's going to become your future manager. So being able to attract those young people by giving them the flexible workplace, it's almost always in the top 3 things that employees want to see when they take a job. It's flexible work conditions. Sometimes it's even more important than the salary. Yes, so from an employment perspective, it's super important. Then you have a lot of other benefits. If you really embrace flexible work and hybrid workplace management, you start to reduce the cost of your office, obviously. Those companies that keep 1 desk per employee, I'm always a little bit frustrated by this because there are reasons. Some own their place. There are a lot of different reasons or excuses to keep that. But the reality is that you just waste space. You waste the lights.
I'd say you waste budget.
You waste air conditioning.
It's a financial decision.
It's great. So there's an impact. There's an impact on the planet. There is an impact on your wallet because you just literally waste money by having those desks empty. And then you, needless to say, even there's traffic, peak hours. You get people every day to come at the same time, and between 7:30 to 9, everybody wastes time. These times could be reallocated to productive time, but also to personal time. So I think it's only beneficial from a company standpoint, from a money perspective, to reduce the size of your office and your office spending. You increase the employee, you attract them, you retain them, you help the planet at the same time. So yeah, of course, I'm a big advocate of implementing flexible work conditions, but going as far as to not keeping 1 desk per employees. I hope companies will start to think about this and stop wasting money and energy.
Yeah, so that's how you can appeal to candidates and reduce your customer of co-working spaces and of remote work. And also we were talking about satellite office because very big companies, they can manage a few satellite offices. Mm-hmm. But when you're a small or medium company, you might be able to have 1 office and that's it. But for people, if you want to attract, as we were saying, if you want to attract good talents, location is very important. So being able to manage maybe 2 seats there are 2 seats here, 3 seats there,
Yeah.
and not having 20 people at the same place, but maybe having a main office with 10 seats where most people come maybe once a week or month, I don't know, and having two satellite offices and being able to manage seats in different places. That's weird flexibility there.
Yeah. All the companies that I've built, when you're in control, it's easy. But even though I'm an advocate of hybrid work, all my businesses are remote first, simply because I need to hire people where I can afford, where they are the best talents, and they are not by any miracle sitting within 100 kilometers from me. No, that's not what happened. And now with all the
Too
remote
bad.
work capabilities, you can access to pools of talents that are pretty widespread across different countries and giving you access to fantastic people. And if you put in place the right tools from a remote collaboration standpoint, everything works. But when you create purely remote organizations, then there's always this difficulty in creating a work culture that want to have everybody embrace and be part of something. So it's a little bit hard. One way of doing that and make sure that your remote employees don't get isolated is by offering them an option to actually access one of the co-working spaces next to where they are. So their colleagues are not going to be in that co-working space. They're going to be working for another company, but it's the same as having another department in the same office. So your new colleagues become co-workers from other companies, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. So that's FLYDESK now. What you're doing now, is there a next step, something you're planning to do sometime soon? Or maybe not sometime soon, but some inspiration you'd like to explore? Or?
So for FLYDESK, there are different routes we're exploring. We're trying to find partners that will integrate our software into their own HRIS software. So something broader, because FLYDESK is starting to become an HR tool. Like it's a daily solution where you make your planning. It's not just about desk booking. It's also about the leave management that starts to have some impact on the payroll and so on. So we're trying to connect with some RIS solutions in need of a hybrid workplace scheduling solution, which we can provide. So these are the next steps, trying to find a right partner. And we are also exploring some partnership to build actually a version of FLYDESK for co-working spaces themselves. You're probably familiar with some of the tools that those co-working spaces are using to manage their space and to actually sell those spaces to their clients, like solutions like Nexus, Office R&D, and so on. And we made some surveys with some of our co-working space partners, asking them if FLYDESK, as the software part, was something that could be interesting for us. And we had a lot of positive feedback. But the only missing part for us was to be able to manage the billing part of the workplace itself. So we are, from our internal development standpoint, considering to integrate a component about billing, allowing companies to do co-working spaces to do everything with us, selling their own space, making sure it's filled with companies, and giving at the same time an option for them to communicate with companies, arranging social events also to get people back to their co-working space. So that's one, let's say, mid-long-term objective we're trying to think about, creating a version of FLYDESK for co-working space themselves. Whether it's going to be through a third-party player that we'll integrate with or doing it ourselves, we'll see.
Yeah, interesting, really. And that's FLYDESK, but recently you've also started Moonwork. When did you start it, and why did you move from FLYDESK to this new venture?
COVID made us sadly leave Hong Kong. And then we arrived in Switzerland, and through meetings, introduction to people, I started to be connected with the startup scene in Geneva, in Switzerland. And I got approached to actually help a startup studio launch a new HR tech. And I found the idea actually quite interesting. And I was thinking, okay, is there a way I can juggle between my FLYDESK business and start to explore also another one at the same time? And it turns out it was actually possible. I've been then focusing for the last 3 years now, 2-3 years into this hybrid recruitment solution towards AI with Moonwork, and we're very much focused on the Swiss market now. And so all my, let's say, history around hybrid workplace management were things that I always keep in mind when it comes to helping companies understand what can attract the younger generations. And it's always some things that we try to put in front of a career page of companies and their job offers on our platform so that it ultimately attracts the younger generation. So now these days it's really about making sure we have the best AI tool, that we simplify the costs. We want to disrupt a little bit the traditional recruitment market. Instead of paying a very high percentage of a yearly salary of a person you hire, our goal is to go pretty flat fee, pretty affordable, and ultimately provide you the same level of satisfaction thanks to the AI and making sure that you have the best match in front of the best job offer. So that's the focus nowadays on Moonwork.
The next frontier, yes. Sadly, we're coming bit by bit towards the end. But before we do that, I'd like to ask you one last question. Is there anything else we didn't tackle yet you would like to talk about?
No, I think we covered a lot.
We did.
Yeah, and anyone interested in trying out FLYDESK as a software, there's a free trial model. So you just go on flydesk.com, you ask for a demo, or you even start by yourself. So everything is self-service. You can build your own deployment in a second. And as for Moonwork, so at this stage, it's mostly focused on Swiss companies, but we are starting to think going beyond the Swiss borders. So anyone interested in exploring recruitment and AI, feel free to reach out to me. So moonwork.ch as well will be the way to approach us.
Yeah, and that's my next question. If people want to know more about you, your journey, FLYDESK and work, how can they reach out?
For me personally, just go on LinkedIn the way you did. I'm always very responsive on LinkedIn. That's pretty easy. And if one of the solutions we develop is some things of interest, there's always people taking care of the inbound request. And I often join myself on demo meetings on first ones.
Wow, nice. So you're on the DMs as well from your companies too.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your passion about coworking and HR. It was a real pleasure.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome and see you soon. Bye-bye.